$150 will be given to each family in attendance. Cost is $10 per family, and you must pre-register. Limited space is available. Call 724-925-3030.
Kennywood is go for launch. We have ignition. Liftoff. Kennywood's open, and the new Skyrocket coaster is blasting off. 0 to 50 in 3 seconds flat with 3 inversions. Plus a new laser spectacular and all your favorites like Thunderbolts and Potato Patch Fries.
Just a short drive from Pittsburgh. Visit Kennywood.com for more information.
Sunny today, high 73. Partly cloudy tonight, low 48. Sunny tomorrow, high 76. That's the forecast. From the KHP Weather Center, I'm Barry Banker.
KHP Irwin. Serving the tri-state area, you're listening to 620. AM Impact on Your Health is sponsored by Dennis J. Courtney, M.D., Director of the Courtney Medical Group, located at 3075 Washington Road in McMurray, Pennsylvania. For more information or to make an appointment, call 724-942-3002. That's 724-942-3002 for Dennis J. Courtney, M.D.
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to An Impact on Your Health. An Impact on Your Health for every day. Our goal is to have you learn at least one thing to help you live better and longer. Of course, we're heard here each and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 to 9 o'clock. I'm Dr. Dennis Courtney, and I'm with you each and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 to 9. An Impact on Your Health, where each day you'll find current medical news, knowledgeable guests, fascinating health topics, and of course where we do encourage you to call in to join in. Today, part 2 of, those of you who were with us on Monday had a chance to hear from a very good friend of mine, a mentor of mine, and a treasure. I use the word treasure very little in my vocabulary, but it's literally a treasure of alternative medical practice that has been accomplished by him over the last 30 years. I got a kick out of him telling us the other day that his certificate for environmental medicine, certificate number is 32. Wow. Anyway, Dr. Roy Kerry's back. We're talking about thyroid. By the way, I got loads of calls from you. You enjoyed the show, but you complained to me, and I'm glad you did, that you couldn't understand Dr. Kerry. He was too muffled. You could hear me loud and clear, but you couldn't hear him. Well, I spoke to him this morning. He was using headphones the other day, which he does not have with him today. It was crystal clear to me, as I spoke to him, that you're not going to have any trouble hearing him today. We're going to go over a couple of the highlights I think that he introduced to us on Monday, and that we both use in our medical practice. And then we're going to be talking about how you actually treat this thing, which I think Dr. Kerry's approach is so unique, it really deserves its own explanation by the man himself. So we're going to be with Dr. Roy Kerry, Thyroid Part 2, right after that first break this morning. Now, if in the context of our show today, you want to call up to ask a question or make a comment, as you did the other day, that number, of course, as always, will be 412-825-6262. That's 412-825-6262. And I'll try to get you in. I want to hear a knock on the door. I hope we're not in the middle of a real important concert. Sometimes I wait, and if I don't come to the door immediately, it's because we're on one of those crescendo moments. Just hold on. Don't go away. We'll get to you. Okay? Promise. 412-825-6262. Oh, the month has clicked away. Folks, this is it. Today's the last day of the month. June ends today. July comes tomorrow. Oh, my goodness gracious. 1/3 of it's down. Those kids of yours, I know they're starting to bug you. It won't be long before they're back to school, and football will be starting. And, you know, that whole atmosphere will change, and hope you make the adjustments as I have had to, and as you will have to also. I'm going to share something with you. I usually do. I got a couple of things sent to me via my email. One that really intrigued me, and it has such a practical application. I'm going to pass it on to you. Maybe you have received an email with respect to how to deal with insects, flies that might be bothering you in your home or outside the periphery of your home. Try this. I'm dying to hear if it works for you. And let me know on Friday, because we're going to be doing an open phone version of the show on Friday. This is what I read off this internet, and I checked it out. I Googled it, and there's fact here. Turns out that somebody was visiting a restaurant somewhere, and they noticed that there were these Ziploc bags. You've heard of them. And they were half filled with water, and each of these bags has 4 pennies in them, besides the water, and they're nailed up around the periphery of these grounds. And the family, as the story goes on the internet, the article that was passed to me, asked what were those bags for, and they were told that is to keep the flies away. And sure enough, when they finally had it brought to their attention that is what those bags were for, they couldn't find a fly in sight. A couple of them dared to move in and moved right back out of that area. Now, there were a number of, I'm going to say, testimonials that also followed the email that I received, verifying the fact that whether it's in the home, out the home, around the home, that putting these things up actually removed all flies and other insects too. Hey, I think it's worthwhile to pass on to you. I'd like to find out if you're having insect issues around the house, you're plagued with flies either outside or inside, how about putting up and just sort of stapling to the window well, the frame, somewhere around there, half bags full of water in the Ziploc fashion, and then put 4 pennies in it. It drives the insects nuts, according to the literature that I read, and it just may be what you need, because nothing else works. See if it works for you. I'm trying it. I haven't put them up yet. I'll wait to hear from you on Friday to see if, in fact, you tried it, and if you did, you should be able to notice immediately, I mean immediately, according to what I've read, that it has been of benefit to you, too. Anyway, that's what we do here. We help out, we pass things on, and I'll pass that information on to you. Well, geez, I think rather than delay any more, I'm really looking forward to getting with my good friend Roy Kerry, who's back in the saddle again. Now he's got a Portersville office. He's got a Greenville office. He switched offices. He's now in Portersville, 40 miles closer, he says. And he is an expert and a guru, a great mentor to me on how to treat thyroid. He is putting it out for you to listen to Monday and today, and we're going to get to part 2 right after this break.
This is Dennis J. Courtney, MD. Have you become confused about how best to manage your health? It's no wonder. It seems that every time you turn on the television or radio, another expert has yet another suggestion for you to follow that seems to be reasonable enough, but no matter how dutifully you follow the instruction, it just doesn't quite produce the results that you are looking for. If this confusion sounds familiar to you, give us a call at the Center for Complementary Health, where we'll make some sense of the confusion based on a blending of traditional and alternative medicine that we've been perfecting over the last 7 years. We offer metabolic nutrition testing, immune system repair, natural hormone replacement therapy, chelation therapy, cutting-edge allergy correction, and a host of other safe and effective alternative therapies.
Dennis J. Courtney, MD, is located at 3075 Washington Road in McMurray. Phone 724-942-3002.
Honey, just got the word. The company's new health plan has a $5,000 deductible. We have to make sure nobody gets sick this year. Remember what those doctor's visits cost for last year's colds and flu? Oh, sorry. I gotta go. Love you.
We can do this. We can cut the fast food lunches. Soda, that's a lot of sugar. We could all take that evening walk. And hey, I heard a program about fruit. Fruit of the spirit. What did they say? 1 ounce, the equivalent of 5 servings of fruits with herbs and minerals. We could add some to our breakfast protein shakes. Fruit of the Spirit is a unique whole fruit puree. Fruit of the Spirit contains fresh fruits native to the Holy Land and alkalizing minerals from the Dead Sea with no added sugars. Fruit of the Spirit's unique product from 5 years of work from science-based nutritional experts. Call 1-800-442-3793 for a special promotional offer. Fruit of the Spirit, a blessing for your good health. Fruit of the Spirit, convenient, affordable, and delicious. That's 1-800-442-3793. Call them now, 1-800-442-3793.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back once again to An Impact on Your Health. We're here in KHB 620 each and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 to 9 o'clock. I'm Dr. Dennis Courtney with you today on a Wednesday version of the show, part 2 of what I think, I call these shows, especially with this gentleman, platinum shows, because I think they're just so powerful in terms of the information that we're going to impart to you. The disease runs rampant in this part of the country. After all, you do live smack dab in the middle of something called a goiter belt. We talked about that the other day. But how to treat thyroid issues looks as though it just isn't being done appropriately in a whole bunch of places. I think we're to stop right now, listening to the guru of the treatment of thyroid, how you actually can overcome these thyroid problems. And he's with us today. He's going to spend some time revealing to you his particular approach, one that he's been able to share with me as my mentor, and maybe he can mentor you also. His name is Dr. Roy Kerry. He's back in the saddle. He's in his Portersville office right now. Let's say good morning and welcome back to Roy. Good morning, Roy.
Good morning. Good
Oh, you are so crystal clear this morning. I told you we got a lot of calls from people saying, I love the guy. I couldn't hear him. Oh, boy, I know they're hearing you today.
Well, I apologize for that headset.
Okay, well, that headset, yeah, you have to get rid of that headset and just stick with the phone because it is crystal clear. We introduced the concept of thyroid disease. You and I have spoken so many times about it. It's really been a clinical edge of yours. You say over 25 years of treating thyroid in particular ways has led you to be able to conclude which ways work, which ways don't work. And we're ready to talk about the way that works today, but hopefully, two things I want to get out of the way. One, I want to allow you to please take this opportunity to give folks who are listening, and especially who might live in the northern part of the city, very, very close to you, your Portersville exit right off of the exit is there you are. How do we contact you? How do listeners contact you that may want to visit you? You're back into practice again. What's the phone number in Portersville? And by the way, what's the one in Greenville?
Well, I should give the one in Greenville because we're only in Portersville one day and we're in the other office almost all day. So
okay.
That's 724-588-2600, 588-2600.
And that's Greenville, huh?
Yes, I would prefer they don't call the Portersville office because it's an answering machine.
All right, so have them call Greenville, and then they can decide where they want to see you if you're going to see you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just about a half hour from the point, no lights. Once you get on 79 north and turn left on 96, and you're in front of my door. Parking within 10 steps of the door, and the parking's free out here in the country, and nice area to come to.
No one ever got lost going to your Portersville office, that's for sure, Roy.
They get lost going to yours down 19 there.
They probably
You can have the southern half of Pittsburgh, and I'll take the northern half and take care of these people.
There's so many folks out there that can benefit from this treatment. I'm sure you'll get a lot of calls, and I'm sure I will too. By the way, I call you you're 36. Are you 36 or 32? Which one are you?
On the
your environmental medicine.
Number 32.
You're 32.
Yeah.
So we're dealing with number 30. Folks, he's been doing this. He was one of the first. He was a pioneer. 32 is the number of his certificate from from the environmental medicine.
I hope it comes out to why that's important to the diagnosis. There's so many poisons in the world that cause this that I deal with on a regular basis and try to cure the cause instead of just treat symptoms in a few people.
Take a moment on that, Roy, because I think it is an important aspect of any disease. You've certainly focused on it with respect to thyroid, but take a moment. Talk about how your environmental background has been very helpful to you in making those kind of turnarounds. Go ahead.
Well, I started out in ear, nose, and throat surgery. I trained at Pitt all the way through. Finished clear back in '69. All my mentors have long since retired, and my peers are retiring. I'm, I guess, too down to retire, but I enjoyed fixing people with this problem. So I used to do a lot of head and neck surgery and do thyroid surgery and wondered why, and say, why don't I look at the medical causes of these things? And then we got into it. Heard Dr. Dennis Wilson lecture once on using the T3, and I've been doing that for 25 years or so, and he kind of clued me into some things, but he didn't have the quite concept right, even though what he did worked by using the pure T3 type of therapy instead of T4. Then we keep learning more things. I just had a patient come in yesterday, it's interesting, that brought Dr. Mark Starr's book in called Hypothyroidism Type 2. Excellent book, and it's in his revision. He just had to print 20,000 more copies. And he happens to be a pain medicine doctor, by the way.
Oh, no.
And was injured by a mercury filling in a root canal. These are two things I've been interested in also for about 25 years, trying to help people get the mercury out, because it's one of the main causes of the type of thyroid we're treating where the reverse T3 goes too high. So this all ties together, even your special interest, Mark Starr's in your field, but started treating it because he was injured himself by the mercury in the mouth. The other thing he talks about a lot is fluoride in our water. And it gets in the way of the iodine, which is essential to make your hormone. We have 4 iodine atoms get around the 2 atoms of tyrosine, the protein that carries it. And if you have fluoride in your water, in your system, then the fluoride displaces the iodine and it makes it not work. And that's kind of the same way that mercury works to displace the selenium, that is the metal essential to convert to T4 to T3, which is why we're talking today pretty much, because that's the unknown diagnosis. Now, Mark Starr doesn't happen to know that yet. I'm looking here at the newsletter of Dr. Jonathan Wright, one of the most intelligent guys in the world, I think, in medicine, and he brings it out that this reverse T3 is a good clue to having heavy metal toxicity like mercury, cadmium, arsenic, lead will block the function of selenium. This happens because the 2 metals have 2 electrons in the outer ring, and the mercury is poison and it gets in the way of the selenium, and therefore the reverse T3 goes up and the real active T3 goes down, and we need a ratio of 10 to 1, the total T3 over the reverse T3. And that measurement then tells us that we got this peripheral problem of the cells not taking on the thyroid hormone to regulate our total metabolism.
I'll tell you what, rather than, and I think many listeners are following us, but Dick, let's put the reverse T3 in this context. If you don't need to have this particular lab test, I think this came out really crystal clear the other day, to make a diagnosis as to whether or not you have a thyroid problem.
Well, we should do this like we do any other disease. You take a history and do a physical first. And the history means you might have, I counted some of the ones in Mark Starr's book. He had 36 on one page, 36 symptoms. And so if you're sick, you might have thyroid disease. Even if you're not real sick, if you're just tired and worn out and have the chronic fatigue syndrome or fibromyalgia, all these other things people call this, because we have so many symptoms, we put them in a set and then we put some doctor's name on it. Like Hashimoto's thyroiditis, that's an allergy to the thyroid. We didn't even talk much about that. That's a whole other ballgame that we need to look at. So that the tests we do run from the TSH, T4, which most doctors will do, but the problem is they're not going to show. Probably 90% of people that have thyroid disease don't have those abnormal. And then we have to do the T3 and the total T3 to help do that ratio, and the reverse T3, and then we put the total T3 over the reverse T3, and that needs to be about a 10 to 1 ratio. And then we need the antibodies to see if you're allergic to your own thyroid.
But these lab tests won't be necessary to learn whether or not you're going to be treated. But before you start treating it, you need these lab tests to be able to find out what you're up against and how much of the treating substance, what kind of thyroid hormone to use. Otherwise, you're really in the dark about the journey you're about to take. Not that you need to take the journey, because between those symptoms, and I think it came out clear, the basal body temperatures, which you say taking that temperature first thing in the morning with a shakedown thermometer should be between 97.8 and 98.2.
Right.
I hear that. That's pretty precise. Never heard it in such precise terms before. You combine those two, the temperature with symptoms, and you've made the diagnosis.
Yeah, and before we had tests back in the 1800s, so about 1950, doctors were smart enough to treat people if they had that set of symptoms and put people on the Armour thyroid extract, and they usually did fine. Now we have more toxins in the world. We've got to look to this next step of what blocks the function at the cell level. And that's why Mark Starr calls this type 2 hypothyroidism, like type 2 diabetes, where the person has enough insulin or even higher, but the receptor sites in each cell don't accept it. And that's kind of the same thing happening here. But we now have the test that Mark Starr doesn't apparently even know about yet, with the reverse T3 to prove this. I've been treating people for, like I said, for 25 years, and I've been doing the test only 4, but I got success by finding the symptoms and using the pure T3, which now we have the proof of why we are doing it.
So reverse, also I thought was very fascinating, this reverse T3, which is a naturally occurring product that your body makes. It usually makes this, that you pointed out the other day, in periods of starvation. And I thought that and would do so, the body would do so, because if you actually were in a starvation mode, you'd want to conserve your energy and have your metabolism lowered. So innately, you have the ability to use reverse T3 to lower that down. And in the situation, if you were in a starvation position, it would be helpful. But because of our dieting, and it is so prevalent and pervasive, people are actually, the dieter crowd is actually putting their thyroid at a severe disadvantage because they're making more reverse T3, which acts like the set of brakes on the thyroid, which leads to increased weight. It just creates its own paradoxical circle, doesn't it?
Exactly. You hit the nail on the head. And this is a very genetic disease, but the reason for the genetic disease, now we understand the mechanism. And we have now a double problem. We have so much heavy metal toxicity and so much fluoride and chlorine in our water that these two things block it from the environmental standpoint, which is my special interest, and cause all these symptoms. But we can fix it by simply providing the active hormone that's blocked by the lack of selenium, mercury, or dieting, producing this imbalance, so we can fix it and bypass all these causes. Now, how are you going to lose weight if you don't diet? Well, you have to diet, and you have to correct the thyroid in order to be able to diet instead of making yourself worse. So all these poor people are told to be closet eaters and lying about what they eat every day. They're truthful. It's just their metabolic rate has been dropped by the whole mechanism. I had an interesting patient yesterday. He had a partial Indian background and Irish background where people went through the famines. And another patient had stomach bending about 3 years ago, lost 90 pounds and then gained 30 back and couldn't lose the 30 again because we identified she has the reverse T3 out of sight. And she's been trying to diet and making it worse, and she has a mouthful of fillings, and that makes it worse. And they're not too common to not have enough selenium, but I've seen several people that just don't have enough selenium, have beautiful teeth, and just add the selenium, and that fixes it. So we need to fix the causes instead of just tell them it's all in their head and go see a psychiatrist, which is typical.
All right, so before we move on, let's just close off this startup today, talking about the 5 labs that have to be ordered in order for you, the doctor, me, the doctor, to know how to go about the treatment. We don't need it to make the diagnosis of thyroid. That's pretty easily done. But in order, before we start this and embark on this, we want to know what we're up against. What are those 5 labs again?
TSH, T4, T3, in total T3. Now, the T4 and the T3, we now call them free T4 and free T3 because part of the hormones that bound up the protein in the blood and is inactive. And so the newer tests are all free T3 and free T4. But the total T3 is necessary to do the ratio over reverse T3 to get that ratio. Even 7 to 1 is not good enough. It needs to be 10 to 1 or greater. Then we didn't talk much about the antibodies, but we have to do the thyroglobulin and the peroxidase antibodies to make sure you're not allergic to their own thyroid mechanism. I even have patients that are literally allergic to all the different forms. There I don't know quite what to do with them. That's under my special interest in checking the allergies. We have some treatments we can produce for that, and that has Dr. Hashimoto's name, that you can be allergic to your own thyroid, you can be allergic to the various hormones, and that's another tricky situation that we treat that. Many doctors first don't bother doing the test, and second, if they do have a positive test, they don't treat it. The treatment for that is to, well, just like if you're allergic to cat, get rid of the cat. Well, we could get rid of the thyroid, but that's not very practical. But we replace the hormone with the T3, or even Synthroid might work for that, to shut the thyroid down. But most doctors don't give enough to shut the thyroid off completely. They just bring the TSH back to in normal range, but that's not good enough. That's the pituitary trying to tell your gland to make some more hormone that you didn't take enough today. So all my patients have that TSH go below normal once they're on therapy, and doctors will shudder at that and make them drop their dose because they think it's too much, unethical, or illegal, but that's the secret, is to keep the TSH a little bit below normal.
Exactly. Once you start to treat, you almost have to explain to the patient ahead of time, look, expect that TSH is going to drop low and that the T4 is going to also drop.
It may disappear.
It may go vanish.
Yeah,
and any other doctor looking at those lab results, once we've started, would go, oh my God, what are you doing? Because they wouldn't understand or appreciate the nuances of this kind of a treatment. So you really do have to have a very good explanation to begin and be told by the doctor, look, these are the lab changes that are going to occur. Once we begin, they're expected to occur, and they certainly are anticipated, not to be feared in any way, shape, or form, because when you're given straight T3, this Cytomel, we're going to be talking about it, this is what happens. The other labs will swivel a bit, some tremendously swivel, and just expect it to happen and feel that all is working well when it does happen, because actually they're going to feel pretty good, aren't they?
Yeah, the symptoms should disappear.
Yep, they really should. Okay, so moving away now from some of the theoretical elements we begin the show with today that we learned from last time, let's really spend some time on what I think the Rory Kerry contribution is in terms of how you treat this. Now, there have been so many who've attempted, our colleagues, our medical colleagues, our ancillary colleagues, our chiropractors work in this area, our nutritionists work in this area. Could we maybe sort of walk down through a whole bunch of the contributors to trying to help, but yet not ever getting to the final phase, which is to use T3, which is a prescription item, can only be ordered by a doctor, and that's really going to be the final step in just about everybody with thyroid disease. But let's start out talking about, well, let's say, how about some great helps like the secretagogues? How about selenium? How about glandulars? How do you feel about the use of the iodine? How about the use of any of those? I think they'd be helpful. All of them would be helpful, but curative, none of them. Would you say?
Right. Yeah, you actually have to have the active hormone and either T4 or T3. Now, T4 Synthroid may work if you simply have a gland that doesn't work. Back to the sort of like the diabetic that doesn't make insulin, you have to replace it. But remember, the T4 has to convert, whether you have it given to you or you make it yourself, has to convert into the active T3, and if it doesn't do that, again, with all these other reasons, heavy metals, mercury, and so on, then it doesn't work. And so probably 90% of people really don't get good care with the pure T4 Synthroid form. It's been in vogue ever since it was developed, and we think it's smart to make a drug like this or make a hormone, but not even a drug, it's a hormone that the body needs and makes itself. We can reproduce it synthetically, and it works fine for that purpose, but it's not the answer for probably 90% of people that have
90%.
Yeah.
90%. No.
Dr. Barnes thinks that 40% back when he was doing this have this disorder. Now with so much contamination and toxins in the world, we probably have 50% of people probably have some degree of this. They may not be blatant, they may not have myxedema or obvious symptoms, but how many people you know is tired and a little bit overweight, and therefore they're a little bit overweight, they diet, and that shifts us back into this mechanism again to keep them alive, and they never get treated with the active T3.
We spend a little bit more time on this T4 because I'm telling you what, people that are listening to us today who were so abnormal that their labs actually allowed their doctor to make a diagnosis. Boy, if you were able to be diagnosed as having a thyroid problem, you're really a sick cookie, because most people come under the radar screen. And if your labs revealed that you're above the radar and that you really do need help, then you are a sick person. You have some miserable symptoms. Yet our colleagues, our medical profession, our medical training, I find that it's the T4 Synthroid that's used almost exclusively, and it's the rare doctor that ventures away from it and will even move to something as risky as Armour Thyroid. Do you find that to be the same?
Yes. Even the lab test normal ranges aren't normal. They're an average of sick people. And in England, they've raised the abnormal TSH to 10, which is ridiculous. Our labs say 0.4 to 4 or 5.5. We start looking at it, anybody above 2. Now, that sounds illogical. That's the higher it goes, the worse it is. But that's your pituitary trying to make you make hormone. So I start looking at people to treat them at 2.0. Now, even the endocrinologist now will agree on 2.6, but in England they raised it to 10. I think that's just to save money on treating people because they have national medicine there, I guess. It doesn't make any sense at all. But I've seen people that are below 0.4 means your pituitary don't work. Now, that's what we call secondary hypothyroidism. It's a whole different ballgame to treat. You have to do a lot more with that one, but that's unfortunately very rare. Now, the T4, I see a lot of people right at the bottom end of the range, and I ask them, when you're in school, do you like to make D minuses, or you'd like to make A's? It would be nice to have that thing up to about 1.6 if it works. But then we need to go on to the T3, which the normal range there is 230 to 440, and I see people, and I start to think about treatment if they're under 300, which is right dead middle of the range. Because this, again, is an average of sick people that have a problem. And now some labs go down to 1.8 or 180 as being normal. And I think that's pathetic, and the reason for that is that this test is now being done more frequently, and the average has dropped down because many people have this. And again, it's an average of sick people to go down to 1.8 or 180, depending on whether it's picograms and nanograms. Now, there's an important little point I need to make. When you have the total T3 and the reverse T3, you have to have them in the same units or convert them to get this ratio
correct. Get that
correct.
10-to-1 ratio to be the correct balance.
They'll sometimes give it to you in picograms. Now, it's an interesting thing to talk about because this hormone is in picograms, which is really 1,000th of a nanogram, which is 1,000th of a milligram, and so on and so on. A teaspoon of this hormone will run you for a year. So we're talking about a minute amount of hormone that we need, but we need it, have to have it, or our cells don't metabolize.
Well, let's say, to close off the discussion and move forward on the issue of Synthroid, our colleagues love this stuff. I think I got two reasons for this. Let me allow you to share with me what you feel about my reasoning. One, I think that doctors love this stuff, comfortable with this stuff. Why? Because I don't think a doctor ever got a phone call from a patient who was on Synthroid having a problem with Synthroid. I think it's a dud. It doesn't change anything. If a person felt lousy to begin with, they're going to keep on feeling lousy, and there'd be no reason to call your doctor to say, hey, I'm still feeling the same as I always did. There are no calls. I think that's why doctors love it.
Well, you know why I'm hitting the nail on the head, because it doesn't work. It never gives any side effects.
And there's no side effects. And so a patient is out there frustrated as all get out, but here's the bad side that makes the doctor feel better than the patient. The labs do swivel. The labs do change. And so the doctor gets repeat labs, and he says to himself, wow, things are really going good here. Now look at that TSH. Look at that thing dropping. I've fixed this person. This person is absolutely cured. And the patient is sitting opposite them going, okay, if you say so, but then has to whisper, but I still feel the same. I don't know who to tell anybody about this now. Now, if you're out there, ladies and gentlemen, you're in that fix, welcome to, I believe, what the Thyroid Club is all about. You're on T4, you're on Thyroid. Dr. Kerry says 90% of the people can't get better with it, and 90% of that are lulled into thinking that they are just wonderful, they're doing fine, their doctors think they're doing fine, and you're going to be caught up in a cycle, a miserable cycle that will never change unless you step out of the box.
Now, my patient that brought the book in yesterday had a TSH of 8 when he started, and the doctor brought it down to 2.5, which I still consider abnormal. He didn't even suppress it into what I would consider a decent range. And he comes in with a book and has a page full of symptoms still. He complains about those, but then they tell him to go off to see your psychiatrist and get on some Prozac or something because you're depressed and tired and you just faking it and you're getting old and you'd like to retire. So
every one of which of those symptoms is exactly something you'd expect in hypothyroid.
Exactly. And so he comes in with a book in hand and his list of symptoms and perfect history and had a perfectly normal non-palpable gland and no lumps or bumps and feeling miserable, and simply because he has about 5 fillings. And the amount of filling in a large-sized molar filling is the same amount in a mercury thermometer, which should now be declared illegal. If you break one, you have to abandon your house, and you can poison a 5-acre lake with that little bit of mercury in your filling or in the thermometer. So
that is true. All right, we move away from Thyroid. Let's move to the daring use of something called Armor or Nature's Thyroid in a rare few cases, and I mean it's rare. I've often marveled at how infrequent I find a doctor who's willing to prescribe and go so far as to use Armor or Nature's Thyroid. Certainly in a minority. Could you speak a bit about your experience with Armor and Nature's? I know some of your patients actually end up on it, so it might be very helpful in a few cases, yet I'm getting the impression that it's very few. How would you know who could benefit from that and who wouldn't benefit from that before we get to our ultimately talking about Cytomel, which is that straight T3, which is your magic?
Okay, the Armor is actually 4/5 T4 and 1/5 T3 as it comes out of the pig. And they put it in these nice pills, and they measure the amounts and have them quite standardized. They standardize each batch, so a pig might eat more iodine than the next one, and there'd be some variability. But these are quite standardized and controlled in the various doses. Now, the big problem there is that if people do that, they usually don't use quite enough. I found that years ago, when they were just following symptoms, people would be up to 3 to 5 grains, or now people are afraid to use that much because they watch the TSH and they don't put it below normal. And so they never use quite enough. They use a grain, half 30 milligrams is a half a grain, and they use 2 or 3 of those. Now, another thing that doctors don't do that doesn't make any sense is they never use enough pills per day, because the half-life of Thyroid and Armor are about 8 hours. And my patients, I learned from patients that they were tired by about 4 o'clock in the afternoon if they took it in the morning, which is a common sense thing to do, is to give you enough activity to get through your day, but by 4 o'clock they're tired and cold and can't think straight anymore. And so if I do use it, I use it at least twice a day and sometimes 3. And I'll often go to taking a half-grain tablet so that people can go up on it and do this somewhat gradually so you don't overdose the person the first day. And I start with 1 pill, and a week later take 2, and then you take 2 in the morning usually and 2 in the early afternoon, and maybe even 1 at bedtime, which doesn't make sense to anybody because it's supposed to give you a pep, but you sleep better because that's the way the thyroid works. The normal thyroid runs the same all around the clock. The adrenal is what gets us up and down. So even using 2 or 3 doses a day with Thyroid and Armor, and often you can take the same dose you take in the morning because dose you took in the morning was gone, you know. So that's another clue.
Well, that really is maybe pointing out to why there is almost a failure to be expected whenever Synthroid or Armour is going to be used, because when I look at the histories or when I take a history, I never hear any other use of either of those two other than daily. In other words, you take your Synthroid first thing in the morning, you take your Armour first thing in the morning. There's never any discussion about what to do like from the mid-afternoon on, and you say you're doomed to never correcting these symptoms. You can feel good for a while even on some of these, but if you're not taking the adequate dosing for the afternoon, that part of the day is going to be terrible for you.
Yeah, since they last about 8 hours, I like people to take it by 3 o'clock. So if they take it at supper time at 6, it's going to be a little bit too much active when you go to bed. Now, why would I give one right at bedtime? Well, if you take it right at bedtime, it takes a half hour or so to get in and keep you warm all night, but it doesn't keep you awake because it's absorbed and you're asleep by that time, we hope. And so that's been my routine for using Armour. Now, you still need to recognize that if you have this peripheral problem, like Mark Starr caused type 2, well, it's a problem that the cell doesn't absorb the T3 because reverse T3 gets in the way of these receptor sites, and you still don't have the thing resolved because you're taking the T4 form too much. And the Armour is not quite enough to get most people to that 10-to-1 ratio.
Yeah, that 4/5 to 1/5 thing, I thought it was a 50-50 mixture. You say it's 4?
No, it's 80-20.
80-20. Very interesting. Okay, enough said about it. Let's get to what I believe to be the real beautiful, and I don't know where you came up with making your decision to move along this. You've been using this approach. I'll call it the Roy Kerry approach. It really is something that I know you picked up elsewhere and developed over time, but nonetheless, you've perfected it so well over these 25 years. The main approach to treating thyroid is one that you use straight. I call it white lightning. It's straight T3 because it's the biologically active form of the hormone, meaning that the moment you take this and it gets absorbed, it immediately is acting. It's not like, oh, geez, will it act? No. It is biologically active. Go ahead and talk to us a bit about how you came to really move along this line and take this and espouse it as the Roy Kerry approach. And after 25 years, what have you seen, Roy, in terms of being able to help people with thyroid issues?
I learned a lot from Dr. Dennis Wilson, that wrote a book about this, and was treating 5,000 patients by the time he wrote the book, and shared with it to make a time release. And many founding pharmacies do that. But the time release custom made was a bit expensive and generally not covered by insurance. So the Cytomel has been a brand name drug for years and available and usually covered, but it's a little short acting. So I've found by getting people to taking it at meal times. Now again, that's against the rules. Most people say you have to take it on an empty stomach, and now we learn from the concept of how the time release works. So it either adheres to a molecular structure and it dissipates all the way through the gut to keep it uniform. Well, if you take your pill with food, it does about the same thing, not quite as efficient, but it actually smooths out the uptake. It doesn't give you a rush and doesn't give you side effects, whether that's Synthroid or the T3 form Cytomel. Now, unfortunately, just this past summer or fall, a generic came out for the Cytomel, and it's the worst generic I've ever seen. It absolutely doesn't work. In 99% of my patients, I've met 2 or 3 patients in my group of maybe 1,500 to 2,000 patients I'm treating currently, to actually be totally inefficient. I had one lady that got shifted, and this happened because we don't have to put brand name on the bottom of a prescription when there wasn't a brand name, and people would get their 3-month refills. That lady last fall got her refill, and they substituted the generic because it's about $6 cheaper than the brand name, and it's kind of expensive anyhow. And she gained 32 pounds and lost 2/3 of her eyebrows and lost her hair, and her legs were swollen.
And she was on the medicine. She was
She
taking
was on the generic form, the exact same dose, but it just did not work. So she would come in just about a month ago, and they had to shift her over, and she'll probably do 25 pounds in 3 weeks because that was all myxedema fluid. Her legs were big as elephants from that side effect. Now, the time release that the compounding pharmacies make, and Dr. Dennis Wilson insisted on those being used because they're so smooth, they're a gradual uptake, and you can find the right dose by gradually increasing the dose. You can make any size that you want in terms of the dosage. And he started out with 7.6 micrograms and worked up to 37.5 twice a day, using those increments to increase gradually and give it morning and evening, 7.5 for a week, and then 15 for a week, 22.5 for a week, and so on, up the scale, and that works nice. And it gives you 12 hours of nice uniform control without having a rush and overdose, and you do it morning and evening, and that's illogical too, because you need to sleep. Well, you sleep better because you stay warmer and you don't wake up in the middle of the night with hypothyroid symptomatology. So it's a beautiful way to go. Now, the problem had been I didn't use it very much, as it was expensive and not covered by insurance, and we found a pharmacy that makes it cheaper than the retail copay.
You sure did, Roy. I really admire the gentleman who put this together and has worked with you so long. He's used to the Roy Kerry approach. You talked to him about this approach, and you could see that he's quite comfortable. He actually even fields a lot of phone calls because patients are good. Let's say this: when you go on a cytomel regime, time release, you are going to feel some things that you haven't felt in a long time. Many are going to be good, but you're going to be on the lookout for some things that are going to be warning signs too. Talk a bit about how one should proceed with taking this cytomel.
Okay, we have people monitor the basal temperature again, and to make sure it works. But also, the most important thing is to monitor your pulse rate to make sure it doesn't give you an overdose. That's the easiest clue. Now, otherwise, you can get too warm and sweaty and things like that. But the pulse is a number that the patient can call and say, well, my pulse is 88. And I say, oh, that's not too bad. It should be that much. And it's 130 when they exercise. Well, it's supposed to be that when you exercise. But much over that, we get cautious and concerned. Now, most people, when they start this, their pulse is 56 or 60 or something, very subnormal. And I like another guide is to bring it up about 20 points if you're that low. And so you need to get it into the high 70s or even 80. And you also need to have the symptoms disappear over time. Now, they don't disappear overnight. It may take several weeks. Now, usually the progression of doses takes about 6 weeks to get it up. And I kind of get cautious at 30 micrograms twice a day, and let people stay at that for a couple of weeks. And then they come back in, and if they are still feeling some symptoms and have no side effects, then we go to 37.5. And this is a rare person who needs more than that. Might need 45 or more. But we do that very cautiously, watching the pulse rate and any other side effects of the hyperthyroid state.
So in terms of your experience now, you say you need, I always like when you were Irish speaking, you say, I need 42 days to get this person back to a life of enjoyment. And doggone, in 90% of your patients, that's about all it takes.
Yeah. The rare person has some other compounding things. Maybe they're allergic to the thyroid and Hashimoto's or something. Then they take a little more tweaking. We also keep people on a good nutritional program. Selenium's essential and iodine's essential, and a good multiple vitamin that has it in is nice. They do make specific tablets now with the iodine and the selenium in the same single tablet. I have a multimineral that has them all in there, plus everything else you might need. So it's more practical. You use a good multiple vitamin, but make sure you have selenium and the iodine in there. Iodine and iodide, both forms of the chemical iodine to maintain things. And it does a bunch of other things too. I've seen lumpy breasts disappear in 3 weeks with replacement of iodine. And it's probably a big contributing factor to cancer when you get the lumps and they turn into cancer. Well, if you don't have lumps, then you quit worrying about them. But most people, when I use the iodine, their lumpy breasts, the fibrocystic breasts, virtually disappear. And that's a nice other little thing that kind of out of my specialty, but it's nice not to have that ladies get mammograms every year and being scared of the breast cancer when you don't have a lump to worry about anymore.
Very well put. So this cytomel, you just can't trust your local pharmacy to be able to provide you. You might get that generic. You certainly aren't going to get the time released in terms of the way the compounding pharmacists can work. And I felt that the compounding pharmacists that you deal with, and now that I deal with, and you're so used to the Roy Kerry approach, absolutely make a product. And it is very inexpensive. I think that was a big surprise to me. I think it's very reasonably priced, Roy.
It's below most people's copay on
really?
on the Cytomel, virtually, yes.
I mean, 17 to 20. I mean, depending on the dose,
Yeah.
somewhere between $17 and $20 a month is going to be the ultimate end point for when the dose is finally established. I think that's phenomenal, but it's going to have to be with someone that really understands this and manufactures that time-release product that's good for about 12 hours. So you're going to do BID dosing. Absolutely, I think it's very humorous how important that. Okay, where are you at 7 a.m.? Where are you at 7 p.m.? Almost you can set your watch to when you're going to start feeling like you're crashing, and that's when you got to have that second dose, right?
Yeah. Dennis Wilson used to say if you're 3 minutes late, it's hazardous to you, but it's a little bit silly. These time release don't last quite 12 hours, although my daughter on this can tell when she's beyond 12 hours, she's getting dumb and dopey and can't think straight, but it probably drops off the last hour or two. So I tell people if they take theirs at 8 and 8, what are you doing at 8 p.m.? Oh, I have to go out to church or something at 7. Okay, move it up, take it at 7, and it'll actually benefit you because the morning pill is kind of tapering off. You want to be alert when you're driving someplace. But move it up an hour or so, and then who cares if it's 6 in the morning and it sort of disappears? You're sleeping and you get up at 7 and you take your next pill while you're fine. So I let people be reasonable about this and quit being so fussy and to the minute. Now, I have some people on Cytomel that they virtually have to wear a wristwatch with a timer on it that goes off every 4 hours like an alarm clock to go to get their next pill. I had a lady come in the office at 1 o'clock and her alarm went off and she reached the person and popped a pill down because she
knows that herself that well.
Yeah, and it does vary too much with the standard Cytomel tablet. It goes up and down enough to be noticeable if you're on a very high dose, especially.
All right. We got people who are itching to get at you, Roy. Do you mind taking some questions?
I think I've told you everything I know about this.
Oh, I don't think you told us everything you know, Roy, but heck, that's the reason to come on in and see us, because there are other things in the background. But it's been an excellent discussion. Folks, 412-825-6262. You're with number 32. His name is Roy Kerry, and he knows what he's talking about. I hear somebody knocking on the door. Come on the store. Hello, and welcome aboard. Hello. Hello, there you are. There you are. Go ahead. Go right ahead. You're with Dr. Roy.
Yes, I was just wondering if he could mention anything about the role of the adrenals in the thyroid disease, if they do have a role. And
all right, Rick, go ahead. Because I know you work with it. Go ahead.
That's another program, but it's extremely important. If you're hypothyroid, then it's more difficult to treat and gets almost dangerous because you'll have side effects and rapid heart rates due to the lack of adrenal. So we need to look at that, and I routinely do that with a very simple test. It's almost as simple as a basal temperature. You take your blood pressure in 2 positions, and now the right way to do it is lie down, take your blood pressure, sit up and take it again, then stand up and take it. Your blood pressure with good adrenal function should actually come up 4 to 6 points by sitting to standing. Now, in my office, I'm a neurothroat doctor. I don't have beds for people to lie down on much, but just sitting and standing, we do that routinely the first time in, but that time is not a very accurate time because the person's under a little stress the first time they come into my office and they just drove in here in traffic and whatever, and their pressure might respond because their adrenals keyed up because they've been under a little bit more stress than usual. So most of the time I'll do it toward the end of the visit if it's bad on the first time. If you drop 4 to 6 points, that's a little borderline, so I let people relax and check it again. But if it drops 16 points, you're in trouble. And you get up and you feel woozy. That's another clue symptomatically. If you stand quickly and you get a little unsteady, your blood pressure just dropped too much to supply your brain with enough blood for your balance system. So very important point and a very good question to ask.
Sure. And I think the first part of your answer is one I'd like to drive home even more effectively now is, hey, you got to correct the thyroid first, I heard you say. Then, once corrected, you can move to these other areas. Did I hear you right?
Not quite. If you have a real abnormal adrenal supply, then you probably need to correct that first. Now, it's almost easy enough for that. You can actually use glandulars for that, even though they take out the active steroid. The glandulars are often very helpful. You can almost buy those over the counter and get a little support from a glandular. And a rare person might even actually need some steroid help. And there's a good test for that done with saliva where you do that 4 times a day. That's another important point about the thyroid. is smooth around the clock. The adrenal goes up and gets you awake in the morning, and it drops down in the daytime to keep you reasonable, and drops at night so you can sleep. And we'd have to do that 4 times a day to get that pattern. If it's upside down, if you work night shift or something, that's another problem where you don't have enough in the morning.
Great question and great answer from number 32. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Those of you who want to get in with number 32, Dr. Roy Kerry, 412-825-6262. We got about 5 minutes left. We'll wait for your knock on the door. By the way, anybody else out there? Hello? Anybody? I think there was an earlier knock, and I think they may have left us. Then, well, with 5 minutes to go. And
tell my phone number again. 724-588-2600.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. There you go.
588-2600.
Once again, Roy, I don't want to interrupt you. Go ahead.
724-588-2600. You people from the north half of Pittsburgh come up here. It's only 30 minutes from the point. And you guys from the south go down to Route 19 to see Dr. Courtney.
And you'll probably get lost coming to see me, but you will not get lost coming to see Roy. That's such an easy thing.
No stoplights all the way. And left turn in here in front of my office and park at the door.
Absolutely great. Well, Roy, with the few minutes we have remaining, and I know we'll be listening for a knock on the door if anybody should have a question. Pulling this thing all together, thyroid as a niche for you is something I think that you have no peer, you have no person that has taken so much of their career and devoted to this disorder.
Well, let me give credit to Dr. Alan McDaniel from Albany, Indiana. He gives a lecture at our national meeting of the American Academy of Environmental Medicine, and he nails this down and reveals the nuances of the T3 and the reverse T3. And Dr. Jonathan Wright's newsletter brought that out a year ago. And Dr. Mark Starr's book is excellent, called Hypothyroidism Type 2. It's $15.95 on Amazon. Mark Starr, MD, Hypothyroidism Type 2. But he misses the fact that we now have a test to prove his concept is a peripheral problem at the cell level of
reverse T3. Okay, got quick questions here. They're coming at us real quick. Okay. Let's answer them in kind. You're with the doctor. Go right ahead.
Hi, I was just calling with a suggestion or a comment.
Mm-hmm.
If you guys could have future shows together, because you're really good, the team of you.
Oh, what?
So much information.
Well, that's because I'm sitting with number 32, but I'm able to draw it out of him, let's say. This guy's an encyclopedia, but thank you so much. That's a very nice thing to hear.
Maybe like once a week.
Sounds
good to me.
Thank you so much. Very, very nice comment.
I'll have to come down to your place. We'll sit across the table.
Come on, we'll sit across the table. Next up, you're with the doctor, number 32. Go right ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
I wanted to ask about what part Dr. Melvin Page's protocol with his measurements that he does and then treating people with...
You're familiar with Dr. Page? I've heard of Dr. Page.
No, unless he's back a century ago was a doctor.
Oh, no. He's actually practicing in the Pittsburgh area now. Am I right about that? Anyway.
Well, that's Dr. Forbes who's in the Pittsburgh area. He practices the Page method.
The Page method. Tell you what, the bongos in the background are signaling our time out of here. How about this? I promise to bring Dr. Kerry back. We'll talk about other hormone issues. We'll sort of take the advice of the caller just before and saying, what a team. And just hang loose and be. I'll let you know when Roy returns.
Have to look up his protocol.
And we'll look up Dr. Page's protocol. Until then, this is Dr. Dennis Courtney with number 32, saying so long for an impact on your health.
AM Impact on Your Health is sponsored by Dennis J. Courtney, MD, Director of the Courtney Medical Group, located at 3075 Washington Road in McMurray, Pennsylvania.